Chapter 12. I was sitting at the counter of Shane Ferguson's candy store having a grape soda and a jelly donut for breakfast when Charlie walked in. "That looks good," he said. "I'll have the same, Shane." I looked at my new $2.98 watch. It was 9:45. The bus from McDonaldsville had been crowded with commuters. "A grape soda and a jelly donut for my good friend Albrecht Dürer," Shane Ferguson said. "I thought your name was Charlie," I said to the chicken man. "Or Charlie for short," Shane Ferguson said. Charlie had a big bag with him. It was made out of some kind of rough cloth. "You're a good swimmer, aren't you, Victor?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "Do you like boats?" I wasn't sure. I had never actually been in a boat. I said I supposed I liked them. "Fine, because we're going for a boat ride today," Charlie said. We paid Shane Ferguson and left the candy store. It was 9:58. "What boat ride?" I asked. "Out in the middle of Lake Michigan," Charlie said. Lake Michigan is this big lake that Hogborough is right next to. It's not just some little pond. You can't see to the other side of it, and it gets pretty choppy sometimes. Michigan is an Indian word. It means lake so big you can't see the other side. That's the sort of thing they teach us in school. It was just a few blocks to the lake. Charlie was carrying the big bag over his shoulder. It looked heavy. He was wearing his hat, so I assumed that Claudia was under it. Charlie didn't say anything. He just puffed along carrying the bag. When we came to an intersection, he'd set the bag down and wipe his face with a handkerchief. "Do you want me to help you carry that?" I asked. "The guide carries the bag," Charlie said. To get to the lake, you cross a street, and there's a little park. The park stretches along the lakefront, and in some places there are beaches. In between the beaches there are stretches of rocks along the shore. We wound up on some rocks. "The lake! The lake! We made it!" Charlie said. This struck me as weird. We'd only gone about 8 blocks from Shane Ferguson's candy store. "Where's the boat?" I asked. "Wait," Charlie said. Out of the big bag he dumped a big shapeless yellow thing. He spread the yellow thing out on the rocks. It was shaped sort of like a flat bathtub. It was made of something like rubber. Charlie found a valve and started blowing into it. It was one of those war surplus blow-up life rafts. As it inflated, it looked more like an out-of-shape donut than a bathtub. The donut part was what got filled with air. There was a rubber floor, and Charlie dug a pair of collapsible oars out of the bag. "Our yacht," he said, when he finished blowing it up. "Where are we supposed to go in that thing?" I asked. I wasn't too sure I wanted to ride it. Charlie had set the little boat in the water and was bobbing around. "Just hop in. I'll tell you about it on the way," he said. I hopped in. "Start telling me now so we can go back to shore if I don't like it." Charlie had taken his hat off. Claudia was there all right. She spread her wings like the eagle on a $50. Charlie was paddling with one of the collapsible oars. "We are going to Invisible Island, over there." He gestured with his oar. "I don't see any island," I said. "Hence the name," Charlie said. "It's there all right, and a very interesting island it is, too. Now grab an oar and do some work while I tell you about it. The guide doesn't have to do all the work." I grabbed an oar. Claudia had hopped off Charlie's head and was standing in the front of the raft. She still had her wings spread out and her beak thrust forward like a figurehead on an old-fashioned sailing ship. Invisible Island is a volcanic island fairly large that is broken off from the bottom and floats around in Lake Michigan, Charlie said. It has been floating around for millions of years, but it never floats any closer to shore than 15 or 20 miles. Just now it is rather close to Hogborough. "Why is it called invisible?" I asked. "Because it is invisible," Charlie said. "You should have known that." "I should have," I said. "Let me put it another way. Why is it invisible?" "I was just coming to that," Charlie said. "It's fairly complicated. You see, Invisible Island has the quality of bending rays, such as rays of light. You know that light rays tend to travel in more or less straight lines, but they can be bent. Well, certain islands bend them a lot. If you look straight at Invisible Island, you don't see the island, you see around the island, and you think you are looking directly at whatever's on the other side. Also, if you sail straight at the island, you will simply sail around it thinking you're going in a straight line. It isn't easy to explain. There's a book called Mount Analog by René Daumal that tells all about it. Just take my word for it, we are paddling directly toward a very large island, bigger than the city of Hogborough, and it's only about 12 miles off. "If you can't see it, how do you know for sure?" I asked. "I don't," Charlie said, but Claudia does. Chickens have an uncanny sense of direction. The only problem is getting them to take you where you want to go. Then Claudia is, I started to say, that's right, Claudia is navigating, Charlie said. But if the island bends things so they go around it, I got stuck. Charlie helped me out. It's a force field, like an invisible wall. Well, then how are we going to get onto the island, I asked. We have a long way to paddle yet, Charlie said. How about a canoeing song to pass the time? With that he began to sing some song about bright paddles and good comrades and stuff like that. He kept it up for about an hour. Claudia continued to point the way with her beak. I was getting into the rhythm of the paddling. I liked the little rubber boat and the feeling of being out on the lake. The water made a nice sound slapping the sides of the boat. Charlie paddled with a long, sweeping motion. After a while he laid his oar across the little boat. "Lunchtime," he said. I looked at my watch, 11:43. I got out my peanut butter sandwiches. Charlie and Claudia had brought tuna fish. I hadn't forgotten my question. How do we get past the force field or invisible barrier or whatever it is, I asked. Charlie swallowed a mouthful of tuna fish sandwich. Very easy. We go under it. That's what the waterproof bag is for. We put our clothes in there, tie the bag to an ankle, and just swim under. Once we're inside the barrier, it's just a few hundred feet to the shore. What about Claudia, I asked. Will she swim under the barrier too? No. Unfortunately, Claudia gets sinus headaches from swimming underwater. Claudia will stay with the boat and wait for us to come back, Charlie said. The lizards live on the island, right? I asked. Right, Charlie said. The reason you've been getting the TV pictures lately is that the island has floated very close to the shore and the weather has been just right. Their TV signal bounces off low clouds and hits McDonaldsville and Hogborough. Doesn't the force field stop the TV signal, I asked. It's all around them, not over them, Charlie said. If it were on top of them, they wouldn't get any sunlight. That stands to reason, doesn't it? I agreed that it did. It had been some time since I had wondered if Charlie were crazy. I spent most of the next couple of hours doing that as we paddled along, following Claudia's beak. I noticed that she would change direction every now and then, and Charlie would change the direction of the boat. I decided to say nothing about it. Claudia started clucking and jumping up and down. Charlie threw out the anchor, which consisted of a sort of cloth bucket on a long cord. "This is it," he said. We were in the middle of nowhere. We couldn't even see the shore. Once in a while, when the boat bobbed up, I could see the tallest buildings in Hogborough. The rest of the time, there was nothing but water in every direction. "Let's get our clothes off and into the garbage bag," Charlie said. Claudia, who had been clucking and jumping and pointing her wings in one direction, was now clucking and jumping and pointing in another. "Wait a minute," I shouted. "I'm not getting out of this boat." "If you don't get out of the boat, how are you going to get out of the island?" Charlie asked. "What island? I don't see any island. All I see is water and some crazy chicken who is pointing like a hunting dog in 3 different directions." "There's no need to insult Claudia after all the work she did in bringing us here," Charlie said. "Besides, I don't see what you're worried about. I'm taking all the responsibility. If anything were to happen to you, I'd lose my guide's license." I was getting hysterical. "What license? What guide's license are you talking about? I never heard of a licensed guide, except maybe in the Maine woods." "This is a funny time to get technical," Charlie said, "but if you insist." Charlie dug out an old wallet and fished around in it. He came up with a card and handed it to me. "My credentials," he said. The card was black on one side with a sort of compass printed in gold. On the other side was a light blue and white outline of a map of the United States. Printed in big yellow letters it said, "Captain Moonflight's Secret Squadron. This is to certify that Vincent van Gogh is a licensed guide." "What does that mean?" I screamed. "What's Captain Moonflight? Who's Vincent van Gogh? What am I doing out here in the middle of a lake with a crazy old man and a chicken?" I started to cry. "Guides are trained to deal with panics," Charlie said. "You really ought to trust me and start getting ready to swim. The way I figure, we only have about 3 minutes before the boat sinks." "Sinks!" I was really in bad shape. I had let a crazy man row me out to the middle of a lake where there was supposed to be an invisible island. I had just gone along with the whole game, and now I was going to die. "Sinks! What are you talking about?" "Just be quiet for a second and listen," Charlie said. I listened. There was a steady hissing noise. Claudia had punched a lot of holes in the rubber boat when she was jumping up and down. "I really should have put little boots on Claudia before we started out," Charlie said. "Now she's going to get a terrible headache from swimming underwater." "Charlie, do you swear there's an island?" I asked. "Of course I do. Now get your clothes in this garbage bag before they get soaked," he said. Charlie had stripped off his clothes and was stuffing them into the bag. He had on one of those old-fashioned bathing suits that comes down to the knees and elbows. It was red and white stripes. The boat was getting sort of soft and lumpy looking. I struggled out of my clothes and put them in the bag. "You promise there's an island?" "Official guide's word of honor," Charlie said. He had squeezed all the air out of the plastic bag and tied the neck tightly with the twine. He was tying the other end of the twine around his ankle. There was water in the boat. Claudia was looking disgusted. "Chickens hate to swim," Charlie said, "but it won't be far." "Which way do we go?" I asked. I was still sure I was going to die. "Just follow Claudia. She'll make for land like a bandit," Charlie said. We were sitting in water. Then the boat just slid away under us, and we were swimming. I couldn't see Claudia. "Dive! Dive!" Charlie shouted. Then he was gone, too. I looked around. Nothing but water. The horrible thought came to me that Charlie couldn't swim. Crazy as he was, he might not have thought of it. Of course chickens can't swim, and Claudia had probably gone to the bottom like a stone. For some strange reason, I thought of my new $2.98 pocket watch ticking away in the waterproof bag attached to the ankle of the drowned chicken man. I decided to try and save my life. I wasn't sure which direction to swim. I wanted to go toward Hogborough. I wasn't sure I could make the 12 or 15 miles, but I had to try. It really didn't matter what part of the lake I drowned in. I might as well start swimming and hope for the best. I struck out. I hadn't gone 10 yards when something grabbed me by the ankle and pulled me under.